Have you ever noticed that before grand finales, life does not breathe clarity, but strangeness? It's as if the universe silently took away every certainty you carried. What once seemed solid begins to crumble like sand in the hands. People close to you don't understand, and you yourself feel like a foreigner within your own skin. It's not a fall, but it doesn't feel like an ascent either. It is a suspended interval between worlds where logic ceases to be a compass. You breathe and feel that something bigger is moving, but without showing your face. This discomfort is not punishment, it is preparation. What is in ruin is not you, but the identity that no longer serves. This mysterious vacuum is the portal of the final awakening. It is here in strangeness that your soul begins to reveal who you have always been. No one warns you how strange everything gets near the end. The final awakening does not look like bliss. It doesn't look like peace. And it doesn't even sound like the awakening you imagined. It's as if your whole system is pulling you to a place you can't describe. Not forward, not upwards, but inwards to something beyond words. You don't shine, you don't float, you disconnect from roles, from narratives, from everything you believed you should become. It's not depression, it's not confusion, it is the silent death of identity, the final step of becoming real. But here's the problem. No one around you understands this because the signs don't make sense. They are subtle, strange, and often ignored as nothing. But if you are experiencing them, your soul is signaling that it has reached the threshold. You're not starting anymore. He is concluding. This video reveals the 8 strangest and most undiscussed signs that your final awakening has begun. Signs that no one talks about because they don't seem spiritual, but they are. They are not symptoms of collapse. They are indicators of internal completion. And if even one of these signs has been quietly unfolding in your life, you're not falling apart, you're breaking through. Let's get started. For most of your journey, your inner voice has been your compass. You trusted her, you refined it. She guided your decisions, got you out of toxic situations, and whispered truths when you were surrounded by lies. But now something has changed. That voice seems to have disappeared, or worse, still speaks, but it sounds strange, weak, as if it no longer belongs to him. This is one of the strangest psychological phenomena. In the final awakening, you begin to feel disconnected from your own sense of self. Not in a harmful or clinical way, but in a transcendental way. It's not that you've lost your intuition, it's just that your intuition no longer has a voice, because the identity structure through which you used to speak has collapsed. You begin to realize that much of what you thought of as intuition was actually a combination of trauma memory, emotional patterns, and survival intelligence. It was real, yes, but it was filtered. He had his name, his fears, his dreams, and his childish I printed everywhere. But now you feel that you operate from something deeper, something below thoughts, emotions, language. It's not silence, it's presence. And presence does not speak in words, it moves. You find yourself making decisions without overthinking. It does not analyze, it weighs no options, it simply acts in perfect alignment and then realizes that it was exactly what needed to happen. You don't follow signs anymore. You are the sign. This can be deeply disorienting at first. The absence of internal dialogue makes you feel like something is missing, but it's not. What has been removed is what sets you free. The chatter, the doubt, the questioner within the question. You have entered the stage where your intuition no longer speaks because your entire being has become intuitive. And when that happens, the need for internal narration dissolves. There is nothing more to explain. You don't follow the voice anymore. You are the very consciousness of where it came from. You're sitting in your room, surrounded by the same things you've always loved. A lamp he bought years ago, a photo that one day made him smile. maybe even your favorite sweater hanging from the chair. And yet, it all feels strange, as if someone has rearranged the energy of your life without you noticing. These objects are still yours, technically, but emotionally they have become distant, empty of connection, as if they belong to a version of you that no longer exists. This is one of the most quietly unsettling signs of the final awakening. Your emotional attachment to familiar objects breaks without warning. And it's not because you've suddenly disliked them. It is because the energetic role they played in their identity has been deactivated. We don't realize how much we anchor our sense of self in physical things. A mug becomes a ritual. A book becomes a belief system. A wall color becomes a state of mind. But in the final awakening, your inner energetic structure evolves so fast that the outer scaffolding begins to crumble. This includes your emotional attachment to material things. You can walk through their house and feel like a visitor. You can pick up an object you once loved and feel absolutely nothing. No comfort, no nostalgia, just a vague sense that it once meant something. Some objects may even bring a silent sadness, not because they are bad, but because they represent an emotional version of yourself that is dying. And that's exactly what's happening. Your subconscious attachments to identity are being stripped away, object by object, without fanfare. It's not minimalism, it is energetic purification. Your soul is clearing its emotional territory by erasing false ties to form. You may feel like donating half of your things, feel suffocated by sentimental items, or need your space to be almost empty. And that's not strange. It is sacred, because when the spirit no longer needs objects to remember who it is, you are finally free to exist without anchors. It begins as a subtle displacement. You pass in front of a mirror and, instead of glancing as usual, you look away. Not because of insecurity, not out of vanity, but because something in his own reflection seems unsettling, familiar but foreign, recognizable but distant. It's like seeing a costume that you used to wear, but you no longer identify with it. This is one of the strangest signs of the final awakening, when your relationship with the mirror begins to crumble. Mirrors become uncomfortable, not because of what they show, but because of what they no longer show. The person with whom you identified yourself, linked to the face, to the posture, to the micro-expressions, is no longer the dominant presence in your life. At this stage, your spiritual and physical identity begin to separate. You've spent your whole life looking at your face and calling it me. But in the final awakening, the observer within you becomes so strong, so silent, so vast, that your face becomes irrelevant. It is not denial, it is transcendence. You can stop staring at your own eyes, or you can look at yourself for long minutes and feel as if you are looking through yourself. You may even feel as if your traits are changing, not physically but energetically. They no longer carry the same load. There is no more history in his eyes, only space. This can be disturbing, even phantasmagoric, especially when society teaches us to construct identity through appearance. But when the awakening matures, the body ceases to be home. Your consciousness becomes home, and the face becomes something you wear, not something you are. Over time, this phase softens. You learn to see the body as an instrument, not as a definition. But in the liminal stage, the mirror reflects something that you're still getting rid of. A version of you that is being released. You're not avoiding your own image, it's growing beyond it. It starts in a subtle way. You hesitate when someone asks your age. He goes blank trying to remember his birthday. He has difficulty remembering what he does for a living, not because your memory is bad, but because your identity file is being erased. This is one of the most confusing but also most powerful signs of the final awakening. You begin to lose mental access to biographical details that once seemed essential. not because they don't matter, but because they no longer define you. At this stage, your soul begins to release the debris of identity. Things like your job title, your education, your history, your hobbies, and even your last name no longer sound relevant. You may say, "I don't know what I do anymore," or "I feel like I'm becoming anonymous." And this is true. Your egoic signature is dissolving. The mental construct called I, the persona you've built over decades, is being replaced by a deeper awareness. This does not leave him confused. That makes it clear. You still function, you still talk. But there is a subtle emptiness behind his words, as if he no longer needs to pretend to be someone. The weirdest part is that you feel lighter. Stop needing to tell your story. Stop needing a past. You realize that the person you were never really existed, just a collection of labels that is now being removed. The final awakening is not about remembering more. It's about forgetting everything you're not. You sit alone in your room. No telephone, no music, just silence. And suddenly there is a wave of sadness, joy, mourning, or memories that I had never processed without a clear trigger. Just silence making room for what was hidden. In the final awakening, silence becomes a mirror. And for the first time, you can't use distractions to stay numb. The emotional build-up that your system has been holding, often since childhood, begins to surface. But not as panic, not as collapse, but as truth, a pure and heartfelt truth. That's why you can start avoiding silence, not because it's boring, but because it's honest. And an unfiltered honesty is overwhelming. In silence, your breathing slows down, and your soul, naked, begins to speak in feelings, not in words. You may cry in silence without knowing why. You can smile and feel an old pain unraveling underneath. You're not broke. He's not too emotional. You are finally hearing yourself for the first time without distortion. And this is intense. But the body is wise. It releases only what you are ready to feel. The rest, wait patiently. The final awakening is not the end of the noise within. It is the beginning of real emotion. Silent, sacred, and inexplicably powerful. You're talking to someone, a friend, a colleague, even someone you love, and in the middle of the speech, something inside you shuts down. You are still present, you still listen, but your soul withdraws. You no longer feel connected to the words, to the energy, to the moment, and he can't explain why. This does not mean coldness. It means that you have become extremely sensitive to energetic alignment. In the final awakening, even casual conversations become sacred. Your system no longer tolerates useless noise, fake positivity, or masked pain. It is not judgment. It is resonant consciousness. Your body knows when your energy is being drained and begins to withdraw before you even understand it. This can manifest as distraction, loss of focus, or a sudden urge to leave, even when it would be socially awkward. You can start avoiding long calls, dreading social events. Not because it is antisocial, but because its energy field is recalibrating, and anything that takes it away from the truth becomes too expensive. The strange part is that you come to value absence more than presence. He discovers that silence is not empty, it's clarity, and clarity becomes your most precious currency. The final awakening causes him to drift away, not to run away, but to preserve something sacred within you that no longer wants to be wasted on meaningless words. There comes a time when you realize that you don't feel anything, neither sadness nor joy nor emptiness, just an eerie neutrality, like a soft mist of indifference in the chest. It doesn't bother him, but it doesn't inspire him either. That's the 0 point state, a strange and sacred zone where your emotions pause, where everything seems equally distant and equally close. You are not anesthetized, it's balancing polarities. After years of oscillating between emotional ups and downs, the final awakening ushers in that moment of stillness. It sounds strange because your nervous system doesn't recognize it. There is no adrenaline, no excitement, just the calm of existing. At this stage, things happen around you, but they don't happen in you. You can have a good day and not feel anything. A bad day and still not feeling anything. But it is not repression. It is conclusion. You no longer seek emotional peaks to prove that you are alive. And that's what makes it so weird. You're alive without having to feel it all the time. This is the space where the soul begins to rest, where you stop chasing feelings and become the stillness behind them all. It is not a destination. It is just proof that the story of suffering has finally come to an end. There is an awkward moment when you start to feel a quiet anticipation, as if something great is about to happen. You wake up more alert, more awake, almost with the feeling that something is coming. But day after day, nothing happens, nothing changes. And yet, the feeling never goes away. This is one of the most mysterious signs of spiritual completion. Energetic preparation for embodiment. Your system is no longer being prepared for an external change. He is preparing for a threshold event within you. You don't know what, you don't know when, but you feel that your soul is creating space. Suddenly, he starts clearing his schedule, organizing his room, resting more, saying no more often. Not because he's tired, but because he's intuitively making room for something he can't name yet. And that's where the strangeness lies. Nothing happens, but you still feel like it's already happened. This energy of preparation means that your old structure is dissolving and that the body is being prepared for a kind of clarity that does not come through the mind. It arrives through incorporation, by sudden and profound realization, for total spiritual integration, not by flashes of understanding, but by a complete presence. You're not expecting change. You are the change, riding yourself in silence. And when the time comes, you won't have to prepare. You'll just know, and you will remember. You will realize that this feeling was never one of anticipation. It was alignment in process. You do not realize that you have entered your final awakening until it has already begun. And when it settles, you no longer try to label it. This is the paradox. The more complete you become, the less you need to define the journey. These strange signs are not mistakes. They are echoes, signs that the systems you use to be somebody are falling apart for good reason. Because the real you doesn't need to be built, just revealed. You're not dissolving. It is disarming the masks, the narratives, the emotional armor. All of this falls, not into drama, but into silent awareness. And in that silence, something new breathes for the first time. The final awakening does not give you a reward. It returns you to a state where nothing else needs to be tasted, only lived. So if you've been feeling awkward, lost, or disconnected lately, let it happen. Because maybe, just maybe, this is not confusion. Be conclusion. And so, when all illusions fall, what remains is the pure space where your soul can finally breathe. You no longer need symbols to validate yourself, nor narratives to sustain yourself. Everything becomes simple, naked, essential. The silence that once seemed unbearable becomes his refuge. The absence of attachment reveals a vast presence that has always been in you. That is the point where awakening is no longer a goal, but the very breath of life happening in real time. Nothing needs to be sought, nothing needs to be explained, just lived. And if you've come this far, no, it's not an end. It is the beginning of the freedom to exist without masks. And if that spoke to your soul, sign up. The next chapter begins when the noise ends,